We are on the doorstep of the college football season, not even like a couple weeks away. Like we are right there on the doorstep, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited. I wanted to take a break from doing film reviews of the upcoming quarterback class, and it's time to make some predictions. It's time to make some takes. We are in August, coming up on the verge of September. There's no better time to make these predictions, and specifically the college football playoff, as you saw from the title. And if you are new and you've never seen this face or voice or anything across the board, all I'll ever ask of you is just give me another chance to talk football with you. Whether that's a like, a comment, a subscribe, anything across the board would mean the world to me. This is my passion project. Rush the Field is my passion project. Just point blank period, no way around it. So that's all I'll ever ask. Just give me another chance to talk football with you. But like I said, today we are talking about the college football playoff, not the 4-team, the 12-team playoff. And so how it works, very simply, if you did not know about how the formatting works, is you have 5 conference champions, Big 10, ACC, Big 12, and SEC, and then a group of 5 champion. What the rules will say is the 5 highest ranked champions, but we know the Power 4 are going to get 4 of those 5 spots, and then you're going to get a group of 5 champion, whether that's like Sun Belt, Fun Belt, Mountain West, like that kind of area. And how it works is those 4, the highest ranked of those 4, will get a bye, a first week bye, and they will be ranked 1 through 4. So if you see like a 9-3 team that's slotted at the 4 spot, but then the 5th ranked team is like 11-1 Oregon, and you're confused, this is why. It's because there's that little break between 4 and 5 that goes from conference champions to at-large bids. That 5th conference champion, most likely the group of 5, will be ranked through 5 through 12 with the at-large bid. So most likely, you're going to see the group of 5 team go to the 12th spot. As well, teams like Notre Dame that do not have a conference, their best chance and their only chance is being ranked within 5 through 12, right there with the conference champion. That's why being an independent kind of leaves you in a tough position where if you don't have a conference championship, well, how are you going to get an automatic bid? You really can't. So Notre Dame has to be really, really damn good in order for them to be confident to be placed into an at-large bid. So simple enough. Any other questions? Go to Google. Not my job. We can go ahead and dive in. And I'm going to be honest. I feel terrible about these. I feel horrific about these predictions. I have no confidence in them. And I will tell you this right now. If I get a good chunk of these right, over 50%, right, I will act like I was so confident. Like, look at that. Look at me. But no, I think I might be lucky to get out of 12, probably 4 or 5. That'd be close. That'd be like a shade under 50%. But it's just so difficult to get not only the conference champions right, but most likely the runner-ups as well to make the 12-team playoff. But I want to go through some of the honorable mentions because when you go through this list, you're like, geez, they didn't make, like, who got in the 12 team if these guys didn't make it? And I'll explain very briefly why. It's so difficult to try to project who could be a surprise team, who could be a team that just comfortably makes it just because of the format. Like, this is very difficult to do. Honorable mention, the first one I have is Missouri. This is just a gut check. I'll be honest. I don't have any big justification. I could be very much wrong here. Brady Cook is definitely one of those quarterback candidates that fit the mold of just good enough the year prior and could explode and be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, especially when you're throwing the ball to a guy like Luther Burden. I just think they lost a lot in that coaching room, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, and losing Cody Schrader is going to impact this team regardless. Their schedule's super easy. They could very easily be in this 12-team playoff. This is probably one of those teams I feel least confident about taking off of this list. And the next group of teams, it's realistically a lot of the teams that are primed in the SEC to potentially take a leap in that tier 2 spot. And it's just so difficult when I dive into the tier 1 guys. What could go wrong for them to not be in the 12-team playoff? And this is the group of like Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a very difficult schedule. I think they're close. They're a year away from making the 12-team playoff, but I don't think it's going to be this year. LSU, I love the coaching staff additions that they made. I don't know if they have the personnel to take a big enough leap on the defensive side of the ball while also maintaining the prolific offense they had last year when you lose a guy like Jaden Daniels. Next, Tennessee. I think they're a year away as well. It's a lot to have an expectation on Nico that not only they have one of the best offenses in the country, but that secondary still has a lot of red flags and they get injured during the fall camp as well. That's not a good sign in my opinion. Though they very easily could be in the 12-team playoff and maybe knock out like an Alabama, I just wouldn't put money on it. I wouldn't feel confident on it. And then when we get to a team like Texas A&M, I love A&M. I just don't think this is the year for them. Although their schedule does favor them, they have their 4 largest games at home. I think it's Texas, it's Missouri, LSU, and Notre Dame. I do get a little worried about their away games because it's the SEC. You're playing at Florida, at Auburn. Those are the trap games that you just don't want to play on your schedule because they're such difficult environments and there's so much unproven talent. I can't feel comfortable putting them in a 12-team playoff. The next one is Liberty. I don't really have any analysis here. They do not play a single Power 4 school. So if they are to lose any game, even the conference championship, I just don't think they make it. And you'll see the group of 5 team that I select, they have a loss as well. But I think that they could match up and have better wins than what Liberty does when you're matching up 2 11-1 programs. If Liberty goes undefeated, they should make the playoff, but I don't expect them to. For whatever reason, it's a gut check. A lot of people are picking Liberty to be their group of 5 team. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to be fake woke, like whatever you want to call it. I just want to try to, throw a curveball in there. And if I miss, so be it. Liberty was the favorite to go undefeated, to be the group of 5 team to represent in the playoff. It wouldn't shock me. They have a great quarterback. It wouldn't shock me at all. Then we have Clemson. A lot of people may laugh. I'll even throw NC State in there. There's 2 ACC programs in my 12-team playoff, and I think these are the 4 in rotation, including Virginia Tech. Let me shout them out, to potentially be in the 12-team playoff. Clemson, I just don't think that roster has the extra oomph. It's weird to say, but like the extra to get to the playoff. I think they are really suffering from not using the transfer portal. I'll live and die on that hill. Then NC State, sneaky, really, really good program. It wouldn't shock me if they are in the 12-team playoff. I just like the 2 that I put in front. And then UCF and Kansas State from the Big 12 are very good options. UCF, I feel very strong about, and they were almost in my 12-team playoff, but it's hard for me to bet against. If I'm putting one Big 12 team and it's the guaranteed spot, it's hard for me to imagine that UCF is the one that beats this team, but we will dive into that later. But that's enough on that. I will keep it very short and sweet when talking about these 12 teams. Like I said, I have a different group of 5 team, and they are going to be slotted at number 12, Boise State. Malachi Nelson, Chris Marshall, Ashton GT. That's a trio that I'm willing to buy into. They do play Oregon. That's a loss, in my opinion. I don't think they beat Oregon, but I think the rest of their schedule is really manageable for the Mountain West Conference. I think they are able to win that conference. And if they are going to be a 1-loss group of 5 team, I think they're going to be the best one, unless Liberty goes undefeated, like I had mentioned. It's a gut check. I'm going with Boise State to make the college football playoff. At number 11, I have Florida State. Now, Florida State is seen as the ACC favorite for right now, and I think they go 10-2. I think their schedule, though, a lot of people, at least from what I've seen on social media, think that their schedule is relatively easy. I kind of disagree with the amount of changes that this program is going through, especially in key positions. Yes, I think they've backfilled them in recruiting and backfilled them with transfer portal additions, but it still changes. And then on top of that, I like Mike Norvell, but I think their second loss comes to the team that is going to win the ACC, which this one might be a hot take. And I think this is the one that I feel the most shaky about, because the ACC in general, like we have Virginia Tech, Clemson, NC State, Miami, and then Florida State. It's really like pick your poison. And I don't even feel confident that a second ACC team makes it into the playoff, but I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I put Florida State in, going at 10-2. At number 10, I have Penn State. Penn State over the past couple of years would have made the college football playoff if they just stayed the same. And I think what they are going to be is the same that they've always been: beat up on the really bad teams and lose to some of the big games, but that's going to get them into the 12-team playoff. As much as I may disagree with it, but it's just they are going to be consistent. And if they even take a step forward, they're guaranteeing themselves even more. I think they're going to be probably the 3rd or 4th best team in the Big Ten. And this is just kind of an easy gut check. Now, yeah, I do get concerned when we start getting comfortable with picks, where you just kind of slot teams in there just because of their past. That doesn't make me feel great. And honestly, man, the more I kind of mull on it, that West Virginia game, I heard all the feedback from a lot of people on my Big 12 ranking list, and I was really low on West Virginia. And then people started chatting in my ear. That's a trap game, in my opinion. Now, if they're able to beat West Virginia, I think that they're right on the path of what they've been, and they just make the 12-team playoff, probably lose a game or the first game. I just wouldn't mind if they get ranked a little bit higher, so then they get a home game. That would be really cool, but I just don't know if it's hard for me to see a world where they don't make it because they're just going to stay the same. They're going to play really good defense and mediocre offense and great offense against bad teams and horrific offense against good ones. At number 9, I have Notre Dame, and this is probably one of the most difficult teams to project because they don't have a conference championship to rely on, so they have to be good enough to feel comfortable to be an at-large bid. And I think even with a loss to Texas A&M week 1, which I'm predicting to happen, I still think they can easily make it. I think they could beat a USC. I think they can beat a Florida State or even lose one of those games and win the rest of them and still be in the college football playoff at 10-2. Now, the big debate is maybe the second place team, because I don't have another Big 12 team in here, is, well, should a team like, say, Kansas State that got to the Big 12 championship and lost a close one to the team that I think is going to win, which I'll dive into in a minute, shouldn't they be in above a Notre Dame because they actually got to a conference championship? That's a debate that I want to wait for until it actually happens, but it will be some nasty work to say the least. But I think Notre Dame is still a really good team. I like Riley Leonard. This is a make or break year for this program, and I think their schedule allows for them to take a couple punches and still make the college football playoff. At number 8, I have Texas, and I'll be transparent. 8, 7, and 6. Swap them any way you want. I don't really know how to rank these 3. I have arrows on my little paper that I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you where I would want to put these teams. Texas, I think their schedule, I think they lose to Georgia, but they very easily could be the second best team in the SEC and lose to Georgia again in the SEC title. Or maybe they drop one to Michigan and then lose to Georgia in the SEC title. Spoiler alert, I have Georgia winning the SEC. So I think that 2 losses would easily get them into the college football playoff. I just think when we look at Georgia, I believe they play Oklahoma, Texas A&M at the end of the year, which will be like a hornet's nest of a stadium to go and play in. And then you play at Michigan. It's hard for me to imagine that they get out of that completely undefeated and then lose one in the SEC title. That's 2 losses. I think 10-2 slot them in right at 8, or they potentially take 2 losses in the regular season and then don't make the SEC title. Both of those I think are very likely. Then number 7, I have Alabama. Like I said before, swap them in any order you want, because I think Alabama is going to take a hit somewhere, and it may be a second one later down the road just because their schedule is very difficult in the regular season. And if they even get out of that and go to Atlanta, I think they lose to Georgia. So like if it's 1 to 2 losses coming out of the regular season, if it's 2 losses, they don't make the SEC title, then I still think they make the college football playoff somehow just because they're so talented. And it's hard for me to imagine, even with 2 losses, that they take them out of the 12 teams. That was the question that made it so difficult, was what would have to happen for, I'll spoil it, Ole Miss, Texas, and Alabama to all be out of the college football playoff. I think Ole Miss, their schedule is so light, it's so hard for me to imagine that they don't make the college football playoff because they're super, super talented. Then you have Alabama, who does have a very difficult schedule, but I really think Jalen Milroe takes that next step and becomes an elite quarterback. Texas, though they have a pretty like middle of the pack compared to a lot of SEC schools' schedules, they're super, super talented. And I just think that there's one team that's better than the rest, though you may put an argument that Texas and Georgia are in the same tier. This is what's so difficult about this. The SEC is a pain to even try to predict for because all the honorable mentions that I had, any of them could be the spoiler alerts and ruin this entire conversation. I don't feel good about any of this, but I have Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, 8, 7, 6, and then we get to 5 with Oregon, who's the runner-up in the Big Ten, in my opinion. I love Oregon. I think Oregon as a program could be the national champion by the end of the year, but I fear that we may be a year away. I don't know. It's a gut thing. I love Dan Lanning. I love what they're building towards, but I think they are like a couple steps from really proving to be a national champion. And I think this is the year that they win a couple playoff games. And you look at the following year with Dante Moore, you're like, all right, this is the one. If it wasn't last year, this is the one. With their recruiting and who they're bringing in, they may be a year early. And maybe I'm completely wrong and this is the year they win the national championship. It wouldn't shock me. But I'm trusting the talent with Ohio State, who is my number 1 team. Ohio State, I'm not overthinking the room here. I think they have the most NFL talent. I think they're going to have the most guys drafted to the NFL, and that's been the biggest trend that we've seen with a lot of national champions is if you get a ton of guys sent to the NFL, You probably also won the national championship. And it's correlation versus causation. But as much as I am not the biggest fan of Will Howard, I'm not the biggest fan of Ryan Day. It's just too much talent for me to ignore. And I think this is the year that they finally, ground and pound. They have a dynamic duo of running backs. Even if Travion Henderson goes down, I have more than enough faith than Quinshon Judkins. I have more enough faith than that wide receiver room. And I think Will Howard is really talented. And I think he's better than what they had last year. And they were still a really, really good team. And they may have the best team in the country when we're talking about just collective amount of talent right there with Georgia, who is my second best team. I like Carson Beck a lot. I like Oscar Delp a lot. I think him and Colston Loveland are going to be like 1A, 1B by the end of the season. And then not to mention, as much as we have concerns about Georgia off the field, no one has concerns about them on the field. And I think as difficult as their schedule may be, and I don't think they go undefeated, but I think they go 11-1. I think they go 11-1, 10-2. I still think they win the SEC. There's no one that I have more faith in. Kirby Smart. He's just one of those guys. He's twisted in the head, man. Like, if you just go down from the coaches and the coaching staff and the talent, there's no one more that I trust than Georgia. And they honestly have an argument for number one, but I just think Ohio State having a win against like Oregon, maybe twice in 1 year, or maybe they lose to Oregon in the first matchup and lose and beat them in the second one, that they would be number one, but you can interchange those two. If we go to number three, the winner of the ACC, the pull the curtain, I think it's Miami. I don't like it. I don't like that I'm doing this right now, but it may be because I watched the U documentary recently. It may be because I really, really like Cam Ward. And I remember when I was working at Texas State and he was playing at Incarnate Ward and he just torched us. And I was like, that is a special player. I'm always going to be a fan of him. I was a fan of him at Washington State. He goes to Miami and he's a super, super talented kid. And I like Miami's roster. And maybe this is the year Mario Cristobal puts it all together. I think that they lose to Florida State in the first matchup and beat them in the ACC title. I don't love it, but I think I think Miami is too talented to ignore. And maybe this is the year that they put it all together. This is the one that I think I'm going to look back in about 8 months and absolutely regret making this pick. And then at number 4, I have Utah, the boring pick for the Big 12. I think this is the swan song for Utah football, or at least this era. I think their head coach most likely retires after this year. The end of Cam Rising and his run, like when you have that much veteran talent on this team, it's hard for me to just say, yeah, they're not going to make the 12-team playoff. It's the boring pick, but I also think it's the right pick. And just because it's boring doesn't mean it's the wrong one. And I think don't overthink the room with Utah. If they don't make it, I would honestly be a little shocked because I love Kansas State, but I think they're really young and they lost a lot. I like UCF. It's just hard for me to imagine they have the good enough defense to be in the 12-team playoff. And I honestly think the Big 12 overall is just going to beat itself up over and over and over again. And don't even get me started, Colorado. I'm not mentioning them again in this video because they are not an honorable mention. But that is my list. As you see on your screen, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think this is going to go horrifically wrong. I think there's going to be a surprise team somewhere that wasn't even in the top 25. Hell, maybe who didn't make it? Was it UCF? Yeah, UCF probably will come in, and I wasn't ballsy enough to pick them. But with that being said, I know this was a super long video. Thank you so much. If you have gotten to this point watching my videos, it means the world to me. And genuinely, like I said, just give me another chance to talk football with you, and I will see you guys again next time.